My name is Peter Collins, and I've got a special guest with me today, a man called Barry Myatt. Now, Barry's been following my work, believe it or not, and reading my books since the mid-1990s. And many of the books that he read, he also shared with other people. And believe it or not, most of those books were shared in South America, a long way away from where I am and where Barry is today. Now, most of the books that he actually shared at that time were on the 50 Ways of Closing the Sales series. And I've got 7 books in that series, but there was also Sell Like a Champion that was produced around that time, Spotlight on Selling, and The Secrets of the Super Sellers. Now, Barry, what did you find valuable in those books that you wanted to share them with other people you were working with?
Well, basically, you don't know what you don't know, and you need a mentor. You need to follow people who've done things before you, and they actually have runs on the board, not just people that blah, blah, blah. The books that I ran across of yours were with other closers, not mediocre people, and I said, can I see the books you're reading? And yours popped up quite a lot. Not too many, though, because these people were top closers, so they just weren't carrying around any sales book. Yours were there, and another 3 or 4 authors. All the other ones weren't there. So this is about skills.
Barry, you've now also been in the timeshare industry, and you've been there for the best part of 40 years. But what I like about what you've managed to achieve in that time is your closing rate has hovered around 30% all of that time. And the industry average, to the best of my recollection, hovers around 10%. Now, I don't see 10% of every person I sit with as a good closing rate. But these people also call themselves closers. Now, you take away the timeshare industry, these people are not producing very much in the way of sales, and they probably wouldn't get a job elsewhere. What do you have to say on that particular subject?
Once again, it's about learning and knowledge. You can tell people's goals by the way they pursue them. And for the common element here is they have tons of sales books in their house and in their office. I mean, that's it. I mean, we want to learn. We want to hone our craft. We're not going to wait for somebody to show it. We're going to look for it ourselves because we enjoy it. I mean, if I made $1,000 last week, why not make 2,000? How are these guys doing it? So you learn, you read.
Barry, the other thing with the industry, the way I understand it, is it has an unenviable cancellation rate. Most of those people that I speak with in timeshare say a 30% cancellation rate is common or it's normal. What can you say about that as well? Because I think that's bad for any industry.
Most of these are the 30% cancellation rate. You're right. These are cookie cutter operations where they hire salespeople, almost like a puppy mill, and their attrition rate is extremely high. They're going to have a turnover of all of the employees, almost all of them, 4 or 5 times a year. It's a cookie cutter operation, but the ones that don't have cancellations because they have experience, they've learned in sales what to do, what not to do. But in a cookie cutter operation, you have people coming in and it's not enough time for them to learn what to do. And the training that's being done was more for making the sale than keeping it, and they weren't dealing with the emotional factor. In other words, I don't want to make it seem like it's difficult to know sales, but there's a lot to know, and you're only going to learn it by doing things. By doing things halfway and then quitting in a year or two, saying, oh, sales doesn't work and this and that. And it's like studying to be a doctor and you quit in 2 years because you don't like seeing, intestines and stuff. It's part of the deal. But cancellations, I'm glad you brought that up because I've gone to places to work and I helped them bring down a 20-30% cancellation all the way down to 10. And it was skills and knowledge and things we learned from experience.
What I also like about what I've learned with you over the years that we've known each other is that you've gone out there and you've been training people, but you've trained them in such a way that you not only did the sales training, but you would prepare them for the presentations before the actual prospects came into the room, the closing room. Can you expand on that a little bit as well?
Well, typically, the sales process is 7 steps. In one place, it's 3, and the other place, it's 14. Let's just stay with 7 steps. Actually, there's a 0 before it. It's called step 0, which is called preparation. We can go the night before. You haven't even gone to work, but before you go there, you're getting mentally prepared for what you're going to do. It involves visualization, cleaning the mind of clutter, looking at your past statistics, seeing how well you're doing, knowing you're going to succeed. You're going to dress for the part. You're going to act the part. You're going to use every single thing you know before you even get there. So when you get to work, half the battle's done already because you expect to succeed. I guess you would call it a reasonable expectation of future possession.
Okay. Look, I appreciate what you're talking about, because I think with all of the training that I've done, that's the best part of 45 years of sales training. I would have to agree with you. The way that you prepare people is very important. And when you're managing people, you don't manage by group, you manage by individuality. And the more individual you are in your management, the better the results. Let me just change subjects for a minute because of the lack of time that we have ahead of us. I want to talk about goal setting in its truest form. And one of the things most salespeople don't know about is how important the universities have been in how goal setting has evolved over the years. Now, I started learning my goal setting, I'd say, in the 60s, mid-60s, and with then everything changed. I didn't get to understand the truism of goal setting until the mid-1970s. Now, let me explain to you where I got that information from. Firstly, I'm very privileged because in my day, we used to have to buy university reports. We didn't have Mr. Google. We didn't have all these sources where we just punch in a few words and everything just turns up in front of us. And all of a sudden we start using our own opinion on what things are rather than actually getting deep into the real facts. And what I found with Yale University, apart from other universities, that they got into goal setting in a way that other people didn't believe it was possible. Can you add a little bit to that as well before I go on?
Yeah, when you mentioned the word opinions, it reminded me of something that Leonardo da Vinci said. He said, the worst tribulations a man will have will be his own opinions, because lack of knowledge.
It's very true. Yeah, very true.
Yeah. And
yep, sorry.
When you mention goals, that wakes me up because it changed my life. It really did. We've talked about it before, how I picked up gold seminars. You're familiar with a few of them, and then you expanded on them. You made it a lot better, even though some people had written a lot about it and even created institutes. You've taken it a step further with your studies, and I can tell you this for a fact, because I have collected over 300 to 400 journals from psychiatric and medical professionals, and goals are everywhere. It's more than what most people think, but to be brief, the goal courses I took and implemented, because I was interested in my growth, changed my life. It changed my life. And the problem is, you mentioned goals to most salespeople, I'll bet you $100 what the answer. Oh yeah, we know all about that. No, we don't need. Most of the goal they know about is just clerical things in an office about stacking papers and receiving this or hidden targets and what. They have no clue. I mean, I have 400 journals talking about mind plasticity, the brain being rewired, the whole habit of your life changing. Let me put it this way. One of these people, and these are top university professors in sociology, he said the two most important things in life for any success is decision-making abilities and goal setting.
I agree. And what I want to do with this is I want to show you the validity of goal setting, because so many people, as you said, say, yeah, I know about goals. But do they? There's a process you need to follow in order to be able to not only set goals, but to achieve goals. And what I like about the Yale University report on goal setting, going back to 1953, is it specified that you must specifically write down your goals in detail. Now, most salespeople say, yeah, I'll write down my goal in detail. They write it out once, they never read it again. They never go over what they need to do. And all of a sudden, it becomes a document that they file. And if somebody wants to know whether they've written out their goal, they're quite happy to go into whatever paperwork they've got, pull out the goal and say, there's my goal. Hang on a minute. Let me just go through the rest of that report, because the study that Yale put together outranks every other study that's ever been done since 1953. And the first thing is, of the people that specifically wrote their goals out, and that accounted to only 3% of the people that got into setting goals with the Yale University, 20 years later, they went back to everybody that attended every one of their classes, and they realized one thing: only the 3% that specifically wrote out their goals earned the money that they wanted to earn. And in fact, they earned more than 10 times more than the other 97% combined. But let me take it a step further. Harvard University didn't put its goal program out till 1979, but ironically, they got exactly the same results and exactly the same percentages. But what they did is they followed up 10 years later instead of the 20 years that Yale did. And they also found out the same principles applied. They also, the 3% that actually wrote down the goals, earned more than 10 times than the other 97% combined. Isn't that remarkable? That's the power of written goals, Barry.
Absolutely. It's like a magnifying glass. You bring it in and bring everything into focus, because you're going to be from one place, wind up in another, and you can see it more clearly. And goal setting helps you get there. But it's a lot more than what most people think. I enjoy it so much because, like I told you before, it's like a dredge. You set goal setting for real, and you're really going to follow this. Everything else comes into place. NLP, visualization, PMA, you name it. I could tell you 20 things that are dragged up from the bottom. You don't even have to work on them. Just by doing the goal setting alone, all of this other stuff falls into place. It's amazing. What's even more amazing is when you collect a big fat check, 4 times bigger than anybody else, and you did it because of goal setting. Yet you turn around and tell people, yeah, we know what that is. Oh.
You know, there's one thing with goal setting that people don't realize, because so many people say, you talk about universities, you're bringing the academics into sales. And we all know that academics can't sell. Hang on a minute. Let me bring some academic names that you will realize have done more about helping people set goals than most other people. Names like Tony Robbins. He's been a forerunner of goal setting now for the past 30 years. Guess what he based his information on? The Yale University report back from 1953.
A lot of them do. A lot of them got their information from there.
Yep. Since then, he then said that he's got just as much information from the goal setting Harvard University provide. Brian Tracy is another one of those converts. So is Zig Ziglar. And Zig Ziglar's probably done more to help people set goals than just about any other person on earth. And there's a guy called Earl Nightingale that we call the father of motivation. And you know, the funny thing is, while you're talking about university reports, the same results as Yale have been produced by people like Princeton University, Columbia University, Ohio, Florida, Texas universities, Massachusetts University, Stanford, California University, Notre Dame, That is just to name a few. Can you imagine, for those that get involved in understanding how to set goals, where they will go and where that'll take them?
Yeah, that's why I said I've collected 300 to 400 journals from sociologists. Just give you one example, not to get off track. Carol Dweck, she is a very recognized doctor, sociologist. She did something amazing where she took poor school children, and in less than 6 months, they beat every single school everywhere else. And you looked at them, they were out of the poorest section of Brooklyn because of goal setting. And she discovered something new, which is, she has a TED talk on it, it's pretty good, that it rewires the brain. And it's called the not yet concept. And it's based on goals. It's just amazing. And the more I read about it from the academics, I'm saying, why don't more people know about this? You know why? Because it's not sexy. It's not being given by an influencer and some media thing to make money off of. I find that disillusioning, because aren't we responsible for our own success? Not my dad, my mother, my friends, somebody else, society, or getting free checks from the government. We're responsible for our own success. And what are you doing to get that success? I'd be learning stuff. That's what everybody else does.
Barry, you know, the interesting thing is, I just want to talk, and I try not to do this very often. I just want to talk about my own experiences, because I started doing my own goal setting in a very professional way back in the mid-1970s. I used my university reports, especially the Yale University one at that point, to give me a foundation to springboard from. And what I took away was absolutely marvelous. And then with that, I coupled that with Think and Grow Rich, the Napoleon Hill classic. And the content of that was so marvelous that I came out after 3 days of studying that book, rereading it over and over again. I filled in, to the best of my recollection, 6 legal pads of notes. We're talking about massive amounts of notes. And with that, everything in my life started to change. And I then started setting a goal for the very first time as a state manager, believe it or not, with the yellow pages at 40%. And I got my whole crew behind me, my whole state behind me. And guess what happened? We achieved that 40%. So the following year, and a lot of people said that was a fluke. So the following year, I set the same goal again at 40%. And guess what? We achieved that 40%. And the third year of running, I set the same goal and again achieved that 40%. It's something that's never been done before. And I'm talking about a climate with a worldwide company where the world was experiencing growths of between 2 and 4% internationally. In Australia, we were doing better than that for the 3 years, somewhere between 8 and 12%, depending on the state. And here I am setting goals and rewriting the record books, believe it or not, at 40% per annum. Now, after that, I left that company, went back into my own training business, and then I got pulled back into the corporate area again. And this time I started working with another multinational. By the way, that Yellow Pages gave me 2 enrollments of International Hall of Fame. That's twice in one company. Never been done before either. Then I go and join this other company. I end up in the Hall of Fame there within a year or two based on my closing rate. I was closing at the rate of 92% per annum successively for 2 years running when I decided to train people while I was selling. Interesting stuff. Now, I just want to bring one little point out from that particular area of my life. What actually happened while I was with that company, I started rewriting goals, and I'm working for a steam cleaning company, and I achieved something that had never been achieved before. And that is to sell 4 steam cleaners in one day anywhere in the world. Nobody had ever done it before. Now, we're probably talking the best part of 12 or 15 hours work in one day, plus travel, to be able to achieve that. And you know what? I ended up over a 2-year period achieving the same goal 50 times, and nobody else in the world had achieved 4 steam cleaners in a day. And the company put on a very big party. I got a big plaque, I got a big statuette, all sorts of things were given to me over that, and a wonderful dinner besides. And when it got to 51, 52, 53, not much was said. And all of a sudden, I ended up rewriting my own goals 60 times. And at that particular point, my CEO in Australia, managing directors, came up to me and he said, I don't think you can sell. All I've seen you do now is achieve the same goal 60 times. When are you going to work out how to break it? You're a salesperson. Get out there and rewrite the record. And if you don't rewrite it, I've got no time for you. You know what I did within 2 weeks? I ended up being the first person in the world to sell 5 steam cleaners in a day. We're talking some big money because some of those steam cleaners are worth $40,000 and $50,000, and I'm going back a number of years. That's how powerful goal setting can be if you allow it to be. And Barry, you've seen the same thing in your industry. You know how many goals you've rewritten, and at the moment, you've taken on a new role in a different part of real estate. And what are you doing now? You're also rewriting goals. Can you share a bit of that as well?
Yeah, thanks to you, Peter, because I was kind of slacking off, there's something called life. It happens once in a while. And talking to you over the phone, you just reminded me of a lot of things because I was losing track of. But it's all about goal setting. We've broken records, what we're doing with real estate. For me in particular, it's just keeping your nose to the vision that you have. You're not going to get, you're talking goals. Let me put it this way. When you have clear-cut goals and you're following them to the letter, because there's a formula for this, and you know that, it's like a beacon for an airplane. If there's fog or clouds, it can follow the beacon and get close enough. It doesn't mean they're going to land, but you're going to get there close enough. That beacon, when you're looking at it, you don't have time to look on the ground and see the poo-poo. I hate to use that word, but there's poo-poo down there. You have no time to be looking at that. You're looking up at the goal that you're following, and it keeps you focused on what you're doing. All the little things around you that can distract or become non-sales are non-events once you're goal-oriented, because you're going after something. And like I said, you can tell people's goals by the way how they pursue them. There's a lot of times I don't go out for lunch at all, and it's only half an hour. And they say, why are you eating a sandwich when you can have a lobster out there? Because I work in a luxury resort. And I say, because I might miss a customer. And they go, well, yeah. Well, guess what? In the 4 years I've been there, I think I've gotten 5 sales by not going to lunch. Does that mean sacrifice and you have to hurt yourself? No, a commission check for $40,000 to me is worth a lot more than a sandwich, and it's called discipline. I didn't mean to meander, but
there you go. No, it's good you shared that, Barry. Look, the important thing when you start sharing or start working with goals, I can walk up to somebody, and I know a lot of other professional salespeople can as well, and you can look that person in the eye and you know that they've got their act together. And you know that there's something special about them. And invariably you have a conversation and it comes around to the fact that they are setting goals, but they're not prepared to openly talk about that because so many other people have a go at them, saying, what are you doing setting goals? You don't need to set goals to make the money. And I used to look at those people saying, well, look at the money I'm making compared to the money you're making. And it was like water off a duck's back. They didn't register with what you said. But what happened as time went on and I started producing things, a lot of these people would come up to me and they'd want a lot of detailed information of how I got there. And after I got to know some of these people, I actually shared that detailed information on how I got to that goal. And here's what I found. Most of them never used the information I shared with them. They took it on board. Some even went and Skyted telling their friends and associates about what I said and how powerful it was, but they never used it. So it never became their own property. And those people again fell by the wayside because they weren't setting goals despite the amount of time and effort you spent. I got to the point, like many of the other people that I speak with in the top end of the sales profession, I stopped sharing vital information because I know it was a waste of time. There's a biblical concept that says it's like throwing pearls to swine. All the pearls are going to do is trample on them. They won't appreciate the value of them.
Yes, we call those, well, I don't want to use any words, but we call those the ignorant and the vulgar. They live in a world. You know what happens? Because I read this in a psychology thing with the brain imaging. It's all 10 years new. It's amazing information. That your self-esteem is damaged by failures. And you don't like doing that anymore. So if somebody like yourself, with the track record you have, is giving free information away and it doesn't sink into them, it hurts their self-esteem and translates into denial because they just automatically think, oh, well, he's smarter, better looking, taller, he's stealing the list, he's doing this. They don't fathom it because they have to they have to work at it. And like you said, they're not working at it. I had a boss once that said, stop writing notes on my meetings. And they said, why? And I said, because you take those notes, you get home and you throw them in the top drawer with the socks and you forget about them. And about a month later, you're looking for a sock and you find it in there and you go, oh, that was good. But that doesn't show any discipline. And everybody started laughing. And I said, you guys are laughing because he did it and he knows you're doing it as well, too. He's trying to teach you something and you don't want to learn.
You know, that's so true, Barry. Now, look, when it comes to sharing things, I don't think at my age, because I'm in my twilight years now, that anybody in the world has provided as much free information on selling as I have. I have the biggest, the most comprehensive website on selling ever. Compared to other websites on sales by other authors in sales, and I'm talking about the top guys, and I'm not trying to elevate myself above them. What I've produced is something nobody else has got. Not only is it the largest website, there are over 4,000 articles in there. I don't know how many hundreds of videos that I've cut and shared with other people at the top of their profession are sitting in there to help people understand where they're coming from. And if you want to get onto that website, it's right there. It's profitmakersales.com. Once you get on there, you're going to be surprised with the content. But I go on with thousands and thousands of banners, small articles, podcasts, videos, you name it. It's in there specifically to help the salesperson, and there's no cost. Well, there is if you start buying some of the books and the video series that I've produced that are in there, but that's optional. And you can even pick up, I think it's something like 15 books right now, free of charge. Now, you know that you know that website, Barry, and you've been in there many times. It's beneficial to everybody that's ever been in sales. But once people start getting used to the content, I can guarantee them that their selling will improve and keep on improving as long as they get back to that website at least once or twice a week. And they're very welcome to do that. It's open to everybody.
I don't need to blow your balloon up, but, I was driving in a car, I think it was in the late 80s, 90s, with one of my bosses. And he stuck a cassette in. I thought he was going to play music. And it was a sales tape, how to get better at what we're doing. And I liked it. I liked listening to it. And he said, this guy's state of the art, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, you ever heard of Peter Collins? And he said, no. He said, well, probably because he's Australian and we're over here. And then, information, like you said, was hard to get for. He started the cassette revolution by doing training and helping people. And I think even Earl Nightingale later put out a set. But Peter was there first, and it's not to make you look bigger or better. It's just to show that you got your act together. You know what you're doing. And that one day, I think it was in Argentina, where I found one of your books with a sales crew that barely spoke English, that somebody was translating it for them because they only had 3 or 4 books. And I said, these guys want to learn. I mean, they don't even speak, but they want to know. That's why I say you can tell people's goals by the way they pursue them.
I am so grateful you brought up Earl Nightingale. I'm not in the same league. But what I can boast of is I put out the very first Closing the Sales audio pack set, 6-tape set.
Yep.
And that was back in 1983. And I broke all sorts of Australian records, believe it or not, selling it door to door. And as I sold, companies, they were actually buying seminars off me. And I, at one stage, had my seminars booked up for the next 18 months. I was careful not to allow other people to sell it door to door. I did that personally because that way I could look the decision maker in the eyes and say, I can produce the same thing in your company. And they took me on. Now, the thing that most people don't know, I was the first guy in the world to put out that series back in 1983. There was another guy in 1984 that put out a series on closing the sale. But he's a little bit better known than I am, and that's a guy called Zig Ziglar. And that's something nobody will ever take away from me. I was there before Zig was when it came to closing the sale. It's a shame I didn't put out the goal-setting series at that time as well, but I didn't think I was competent enough. Today, I believe that I am. Now, rather than continuing on with that, let me just change the subject just a little bit, because I want to bring in something that so many people in all areas of sales and in business, would you believe, get wrong time and time again. And that's the subject of the law of attraction. Now, I'll tell you something about the law of attraction. I first came across the concept more than 40 years ago, not long after I rededicated my life to Jesus Christ as a Christian. And at that stage, I was in Melbourne, Australia, and I attended the largest Pentecostal church in that town. And that church was Waverley Christian Fellowship in Melbourne. Now, what I wasn't aware of, after I was there for just a little while, a man called Kevin Connor came on the scene as the new pastor for the church. Now, he was an elderly man at that stage, still alive today, by the way, but he would have been in his 60s, and he ran this massive church. And his background was that he was a dean of the largest Bible college in America, in Portland, Oregon, still one of the largest Bible colleges there. And that was under the direction of the well-known Christian teacher, Dick Iverson. Now, the reason why I bring that up is after a little while, I went to Kevin and I started a series of meetings with him once a week. And he was kind enough to give me the time to help me through and grow, because I was one of these guys that suck everything up, and I still do it today. I get onto a subject, I don't go halfway. I go full throttle and I learn as much as I can. Well, I got into this Christianity factor in a way that most people didn't believe, and Kevin helped me. And I asked him about what was happening with the law of attraction, because I know it was a new age concept. And Kevin said, what are you talking about? The new agers have learnt this from scripture in the Bible. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, I can share with you over 200 scriptures on the law of attraction right now. And that started on a brand new journey, because the new age people are very good at taking something good, but they want to personalize it. And that then becomes something that was good now becomes another opinion, which goes in all sorts of directions. And they just start to claim things which were not rightfully theirs in the first place. But by the time they finish with it, they can claim it to be theirs because nobody can recognize it. Now, if it didn't work for these people that kept on rewriting things, how's it going to work for you? So why do you want to learn something that's not going to work for you? But there are two people I've got a lot of time for. And one of them is Bob Proctor, who was one of the Dorians of the New Age movement 40 years ago. And I learnt a lot about the law of attraction from him. But the one thing with Bob Proctor is one of these guys that was true to his word. He would take biblical concepts and he would proclaim them as being biblical concepts, and then he'd share his understanding behind it. And the other guy is a man called Tony Robbins. Now, Tony Robbins is a special guy because he's probably more Christian than most Christian people are. I don't know what his faith is, but I do know he's one of these guys that tithes. And the Bible suggests that you should always put 10% of your income into the church. That's what makes the church run. It's not that the church wants your money. The church needs your money in order to provide all of the services. Now, I'm at the largest church in Australia, one of the largest churches in the world, and it's called Hillsong. And I can tell you something about Hillsong. They've got a massive donation coming in every week, every year, but more than 50% of all of their income doesn't go back into the church. It goes back into society, helping the poor get to the next level in their life as well. You know, it's interesting that people don't appreciate the level of immersion that any church has in society and how they change society from within, and they do it so quietly that most people hate this idea of the church collecting money, but they don't want to see what the church has done with that money.
Absolutely. I'm an avid student of history, and I can talk quite a lot about it. You're right about the silence, but that leaves a vacuum for the braggarts to say, to fill the void with their baloney, but we can talk about that another day.
You know, Barry, the one thing I just want to share, because I think this is so important. What I took away from that meeting with Kevin McConnell more than 40 years ago was 200 scriptures. Now, with my own study, I've since discovered that there are over 500 scriptures on the law of attraction in the Bible. When you start comparing that, and I want to bring up a couple of areas which are very important. When you compare that to the words in the Bible about God, God appears 4,300 times in Scripture. But that's not the biggest reference to God, because the word Lord appears over 8,000 times, nearly twice as often. And what people don't know is when you look at the Bible, there are a couple of other factors which are so important for our everyday life. There are 3,400 references to the word forgive. And people understand the power of forgiveness, especially if you've harbored hatred or anything else towards that person. The minute you forgive, you feel that you're wiped clean. And the other one thing that most of society haven't got a clue about is the amount of times that the Bible talks about finance and wealth. Now, that is 2,700 times. It's one of the major example areas in the Bible. And if only business people would read the Bible, they'd see how powerful the concept of the Bible and how well it directs you to your next level of understanding and faith. Look, here's something else that most people don't understand. The four Gospels, which Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, which are basically the history of Jesus walking in his ministry for the 3.5 years upon this earth. In the Gospels, around 10% of all the scripture relates to finance and wealth. What he taught about more than on any other subject was about finance and wealth. And yet today, people want to be pious and they say, well, if you've got the knees showing up in your trousers and you've got holes in your shoes, you're a terrific Christian. No, you're not. You're going against what the teachings of Jesus were. But to show you how powerful it is, don't forget, everything I've just been talking about is in the many thousands. Now, let's get back to the other things that most people think the Bible talks about more than any other. Do you know the Bible only refers to love around 500 times? Now, the reason why I use around and not exact figures is because the Bible's made up, as time's gone on, with new additions to the old. So we get a better understanding of the meaning of the actual Bible, written some nearly 2,000 years ago, and then being translated in today. So let me talk to you about that again. Love is used only 500 times. The word faith is used 250 times. The word wisdom is used 200 times. They're the main additives that come in after it. But remember that finance and wealth are referred to 2,700 times. And here's something else that most people don't realize, and I think it's an absolute gem. Fear. In other words, the word fear is not used the way that most people think. And we're talking about the lack of fear being brought up 365 times in the Bible. You've got a way to overcome fear every day of the year if you care to use the Bible as the actual sounding point. How good is that? Whoever thought that through and whoever did the statistics on it didn't realize the relevance to today's way we live. 365 times. Fear not is basically the message. How wonderful is that?
It's very powerful. When I was in Texas, I met some Bible distributors that would put them in hotels like the Gideons do and others. And we talked about it. And there were a lot of, hotels are a magnet for travelers, of course. The suicide rates dropped by 50% over the years because there's a lot of despondent people or businessmen, staying in a hotel. They're in transit in life.
And I've spent so much time in country towns because I love the people and I've met so many interesting people. I've met some wonderful artists, and one of our most celebrated artists in Australia was a guy called Pro Hart. Now, Pro Hart, his paintings sold for many tens of thousands of dollars and more while he was alive. Now that he's passed away, they're 2, 3, 4 times more expensive. But the interesting thing with Pro Hart, he also had a passion for Rolls Royces. And he had a fleet, maybe 20 or 30 Rolls Royces. Maybe I'm just being a little bit generous on that. And every one of those Rolls Royces, he repainted in his style. So you've got this mega expensive Rolls Royce repainted in Pro Hart style. Write those words down, Pro Hart, and look them up and have a look at what he did. He's also got one of the biggest art galleries in Australia because he was fortunate enough to keep on exchanging his paintings with other notoriety painters as well. Now, one of the other guys that I met, and we're talking Broken Hill, which is right in the middle of Australia's desert, was a guy called Peter Brown, who is a guy, we were born about a month apart. He's now in his mid-70s. He just retired recently. And with Peter Brown, he would team up with Pro Hart for the Gideons, and they would turn up in every motel in that region and probably a 200 or 300 kilometre radius from it. Now you've got the most famous painter in Australia alive at that time, one of the most famous apprentices alive at that time, turning up at your hotel or motel saying, can we furnish it with Gideon Bibles? Guess how many people knocked them back? People welcomed them into the premises, and not only that, they got them to sign just about anything they'd sign, their brochures, whatever else, or if they had a painting on the wall, they'd end up signing that as well. So that is the other side to what you were talking about with Gideons, because there are very well-known people. And by the way, Pro Hart and Peter Brown over the years have given away more paintings to charity than any other artists in Australia, all of them combined. How good is that? People would come to them saying, we've got a charity happening. Can you give us something that we can actually fundraise from? And they give them a $10,000 or $20,000 painting. Now, people bought that painting probably a little bit cheaper in most occasions, but the charity got the benefit. And these people sold more paintings, I believe, because of the law of attraction. They gave and they kept on receiving. I want to talk about that as well. Have you got any more to say there, by the way, Barry? Sorry.
No, I'm absorbing all of this because almost everything you write or explain is on the same page with my thinking and the people I work with.
Appreciate that, my friend. Look, I have a videotape that I've been producing at the moment. In fact, the whole video series on goal setting. So far, I've finished the first 2 videos. Now, you're not going to believe this. The first video goes for around about 2.5 hours. The second video goes for 3 hours. I'm talking about video content. There's also a workbook that goes with it and other information I add to it as well. With that, the third video is on the law of attraction. And as I'm working through that, I expect this to now increase to in excess of 2 hours on its own. But I cover a whole bunch of subjects, which I think are very important. And I go through 5 different levels of what makes the law of attraction work. Now, the first is I teach you that you should choose whatever you want in life. A lot of people don't choose what they want in life. And by not doing that, you're not setting your goals properly. Goal setting is not something by chance. It's not something you work through. It's like a business plan, but it's personalized to such an extent that you can pick and choose where you want to take every one of your goals. And a lot of people miss that because goal setting is way beyond just writing something out, then reading it every day, and then hoping it may happen. You need to read it every day and do everything possible to ensure that you attract it into your life. Once you can start getting that principle right, the second one I bring up is that you need to eliminate that things that will stand in your way. Now, let me explain a few things that people don't realize stands in their way completely. Every time you get negative in your life, you create a negative mindset that starts to attract the wrong things into your life. Or you get a focus which is negative. And again, the law of attraction will provide you with what you want to attract. So if you want the negativity in your life, keep thinking that way. The second thing I bring up there is you need to get away from those well-meaning people that feed you nothing but toxic information. How many people do you know that you get the negativity, they start to drag you down as an individual through their toxicity? You can't do anything right. You've never done anything right. What makes you think you're going to achieve this goal? What makes you think you're going to be able to do that? Look at your track record. Look at your history. You've never done it. These are the things which are toxic in your life. Those are the things, again, you need to eliminate. And what about those people that say, well, I wouldn't do that? That is not negative, but it's putting a negative message into the back of your mind. Hear enough of that. Your subconscious now starts to bring that into its own life. What about the people say, well, you want my opinion on that? Why would I want your opinion? You know, the thing is, I've got little banners that I put together. Opinions are like a fart. You should never share them with anybody. I'll repeat that. Opinions are like a fart. You should never share them with anybody. You know, the other thing that people they come up with this one sentence time and time again. Here's what I'd do if I was in your situation. Well, good. Do it. You're not in my situation. I don't have to do with what you want me to do because you're starting to implant something negative into my subconscious. The more I hear it, the more you say it, the more I'm going to believe it. Now, one of the things that people don't understand about how the brain works is, first up, if you want to create something in life, by repeating it 28 times, it becomes a habit. You need to actually read something 16 times before you start to accept it, but at 28 times, it becomes habitual. When you were learn to tie your shoelaces, you didn't pick it up overnight. A week went by, 2 weeks went by. You still couldn't tie your shoelaces. By 3 weeks, you're starting to get there. By 4 weeks, you could almost do it with your eyes closed. And people don't even think about tying shoelaces. The other factor is, if you actually work on something for 90 days, it becomes a workable lifestyle. Now, I'll tell you why I think that's so important. When it comes to selling, most people don't realize the power of affirmations. Now, here's the thing with affirmations. Most people know that in selling, affirmations are crucial. In business, affirmations are crucial, but they're hard work. And generally what you have to do is read through 10 or 20 affirmations for that day, 3 or 4 times a day, or memorize it, then verbalize it. After a couple of days, it's too much. And most people start giving it away. What I suggest people do is learn a different way of working with their affirmations, because affirmations generally are negative. Affirmations are the things we know we have to do. They're logical. And we all know that in selling, if you try and sell logically, you're never going to sell very much at all. You need to sell emotionally. The minute you start selling emotionally, you start making those sales. So you now start to bring your affirmations in emotionally. And you can just change a few words around, and all of a sudden your affirmations start to come to life. And you're now able to work with your affirmations for 28 days. At 28 days, it's habit forming. You work with your affirmations for 90 days, it becomes a lifestyle, which then becomes unstoppable. Once you get to that point, you can then work on your affirmations forever, and they'll work for you. And when it comes to goal setting, your affirmations are crucial to ensure that your goal setting comes to pass and creates what you want in your life. I can spend the next few hours on affirmations, and in fact, I've already spent more than 90 minutes in my first and second goal setting tapes just on affirmations. And with affirmations, that brings in another area which is so crucial, and that's visualization. Because once you start to visualize, it strengthens the affirmations. And as your affirmations get stronger, your visualization gets better and better and better. Now, getting back to this list that I created, the third point is don't doubt or question, but visualize what you want to attract. Now, I've just talked about affirmations, and I've talked about visualization, and there's my fourth point. It's the visualization that brings in the law of attraction. It's the affirmation that brings in the law of attraction, because what you're doing is focusing on what you want in your life. You're focusing on the positive. And the minute a negative thought starts coming up, your subconscious is going to question why you're bringing up negativity.
You'll be aware of it.
Yep. That way you move from positive to positive to positive to positive, specifically in 2 areas, affirmation and visualization. The fourth point that I bring up is you need to take action to attract whatever you want. Now, so many people miss out on the whole concept of the law of attraction because they don't take action. Think about it. It's such an important activity, and yet most people avoid taking action. They go through all the processes, then all of a sudden they fall off the cliff because that one factor is not worked on. There are two differences. So many people still get this wrong. Doesn't matter whether they're in sales, in business, or their own personal life. And the two words that I want to bring to your attention are action and activity. Hang on a minute. So many people get involved in activity. Activity is not action. Activity cannot be anything else but activity. Do you get the idea of where I'm coming from? The more active you are, the more time-consuming your activities become. But the minute you bring action into it, you then work towards a conclusion. It's something that must be done. I don't know how many people I know that talk about what their actions are going to be, but all they're doing is chewing up time through the activities they get involved in rather than getting involved in the action that'll push the activities away and take them to the next stage in their life.
Absolutely. It's like some people seem to be real busy and busybodies and doing all of this, but they're scattered all over and there's no direction, there's no goal, there's nothing, and they're just wasting time.
I can show you somebody that's going to be a failure because they're activity oriented. So many people come into sales and they're working on what they're going to say in the next presentation or the next appointment they're going to make. And they're activity oriented. Throw away the activity, get involved in action, and your life changes for the better immediately, not sometime in the future. And the fifth point I bring up is you need to recognize and appreciate the law of attraction once any one of your goals are achieved. Now, this is another thing about goal setting. If you set a goal to achieve something, a lot of people have got their 20-year plans, 10-year plans, 5-year plans, so forth, already written down. But it's a bunch of words without a full structure. Without that structure, you're not going to achieve it. Now, let me take it to another level when we're talking about those structures. First up, in goal setting, the minute you achieve a goal, whether it's a weekly goal, reward yourself for it. Acknowledge that you've received it and achieved it, because once you do that, you now bring in more of the law of attraction that you're working on. Now, all of a sudden, your weekly goal extends and you've been working on your monthly goal. Once you achieve your monthly goal, reward yourself. Now, I'm not talking something really big. I used to take my wife out and I would reward myself with a dinner. It cost $100 or $150 or $200 for the dinner. It was a small price to pay for what I achieved, but it becomes memorable. And the minute it becomes memorable, it spurs you on to achieve the next goal. So the second month, you've still got your weekly goals, and it might be that you'll reward yourself with a special lunch with a friend or whatever, and then it comes to a major goal. Now, it might be that you go to a live show. Again, not cheap on today's ticket prices, but worth it and memorable. The reward factor in acknowledging every one of your goals is so important. It spurs you on to your 3 months. At 3 months, a bigger reward. It might be a weekend away at some resort. Barry, you're typically placed there not only to bring yourself and your wife to that resort for a few days, but the whole damn family, including your dogs and things. You know what I mean? We have to personalize every one of the rewards that we have. And I know last year you rewarded yourself with a brand new car. That to me is a massive reward, but what you achieved, you deserved it. And most people don't know this, but you told me this. You not only rewarded yourself with the car, but you paid cash for it.
I remember that day you had called me. We were going to talk about something. I said, I'm busy buying a car. He said, oh, what type? And we talked about it. And I said, I'm paying cash. That was a big day for me. I mean, I've bought new cars before, but this is the first time I paid cash. I needed the tax break. It saved me $3,000. But it was a big day for me because I said, wow, Peter Collins called me. At the instant I was signing over the debit card, I paid the whole thing cash. And it was a big reward for me. And it spurred me on because I said, this is fun. You know, I said I would buy a new car and I have a new car and I paid cash for it. And Peter Collins called at the same moment. I kind of saw it as a type of destiny because you've helped me along. I never really asked you, but you could sense I was missing stuff. So you were injecting stuff and reminded me of things. And before I forget, I wrote some notes down when you were talking about affirmations and everything, but I'll mention it later.
Okay. Barry, look, the one thing, I'm glad you brought that up because I'll tell you how long I've been buying my cars for cash for now. 40 years.
Yeah, you told me. I'm impressed.
Right.
And good cars that last.
Well, my last 6 cars over the last 20 years have been Lexus, and I buy the top of the range Lexus, and I tend to drive it. At the moment, I'm not driving very much because the situation here in Australia, as you know, we've been grounded with coronavirus, and means you can't even leave your home except to go out and do some shopping. And that's gone on for years. It's almost brought the country to its knees. And I recently spent 10 days in hospital because of a coronavirus injection, which was a Pfizer. And I'll just voice this publicly because while I was in that hospital, the whole floor, I got to meet a lot of people over those 10 days because I was then finally mobilized. And I'd say half the people on that floor of over 100 patients or 100 beds were there because of the COVID-19 injection. That's how vicious this whole process is. And a lot of people are passing away because of it. Other people have had their lives interrupted, and my breathing still hasn't come back to normal ever since. I've now been back into hospital many times since that event. And in fact, I've probably lost the last 25 days off and on because of this virus I shouldn't have had. And I didn't get the virus. The stupid injection caused the issues. And I'll probably get some reminders from the authorities now over what I've just said, but I have no reason to tell you anything which is not the truth. And let me just go back to the appreciation of the power of the law of attraction, because once you achieve that goal and you reward yourself, the bigger the reward, the better the next level of the law of attraction. And that's why the rewards are so important. Start small, build up to large, but every quarter or so, give yourself a massive goal. A friend of mine a few years back decided it was time to give his wife a $10,000 diamond ring as a keepsake. She didn't like it. So kept a $10,000 ring in a what do you call it, in a some sort of premises or some sort of vault, and it just never went from there, which is disappointing because the guy's intentions were good, but she didn't receive it. And this is why it's so important when you personalize something that everybody shares in the blessings that it causes, especially in families. If you're the matriarch or patriarch of the family and you've set goals which are massive, and all of a sudden you start rewarding the different levels of your family, the different generations, guess what will happen? They'll share it with the other generations. Those generations will share it with their friends. The ripple effect you get from having to reward yourself and other people associated with you in your goal setting is such an important issue. And a lot of people don't quite understand it. Now, there was something else I wanted to share with you today. We haven't got time. And I wanted to get into the benefit of goal setting, because with goal setting, it brings in massive amounts of referrals as well. People don't realize, especially the reward factor. And when you talk about referrals, people will keep coming back to you with more and more referrals. And the reason why they keep coming back with more and more referrals, not because you're paying them, and most people don't pay for referrals, but because they're helping their friends with a product or service they know that you can service. And because of what you do, everybody benefits. And this is a ripple effect like no other in selling. The hardest thing most people in selling have got is to get the next level of lead. And if you're working with referrals, guess what? The easiest thing to sell to somebody else, the product that they're referring. And, you know, over the years, and this will happen to you once you start to work this as well, over the years, I've had so many people come to me, especially if I didn't make the sale, asking why I didn't sell, because their friend missed out on something that they've been needing for such a long time. People don't understand the benefit of referrals to everybody, including the referrer. The referrer gets a buzz out of seeing their friends benefit. The person that's being referred to gets the benefit of a product or service they probably wouldn't have thought of, but it met every one of the needs that they had. And this is another thing I want to bring up as a closing point. So many people are taught to sell on the basis of needs. And I had one person turn around and say to me when I was doing that, "You're a lunatic. It's stupid. What are you talking about?" People will get offended if you try and force a need down their throat. They will not get offended if you give them a want. They'll applaud you for it. They'll be so happy because you've given them what they wanted to have in the first place. Look, the whole process and the whole concept of selling to a lot of people is foreign, and especially to those that are being taught how to sell by those that never knew how to sell. And they're mainly those, and I make no apology for this, they're mainly those that never got to sell properly, but because the company needed somebody to do the training, they put on anybody with knowledge, basic knowledge, and that person became a trainer. And I've met those guys, some of them been in that business 30 and 40 years, touting nothing else, and I make no apology for this word, bullshit that comes out of their mind, out of their mouth, because they don't know what they're talking about, but they influence so many people. And by influencing those people, what do? They minimize their ability to set goals effectively. They minimize their ability to make good money out of the selling profession. And in many cases, they're the ones that force the people out of the sales industry because of their opinions of what should be happening. Those people should never have been in sales in the first place, let alone spend 20, 30, 40 years as sales trainers. Barry, do you have something to close with as well?
Yeah, I was once invited to join a sales training group, a very well-known one. And I met some of their, because I went to all of their training and courses, and I was actually going to be I took the train the trainer course out of train trainers, and I already knew that. But I talked to these people, I went to a few of them. I said, I don't want to be associated with these people. They're nice people, they've been around, but they're not master closers. And some of the students can tell because they were master closers. They were looking for a further education. I deep down, and the money was good. The opportunity was excellent. I shouldn't have even thought about it, but what kept me back was I can't be associated with these people. These are not master closers. I would not want to say I'm a master closer because I could meet one that's 10 times better than me. But compared to everything I've seen in 40 years, yeah, I'm a master closer. I could not be associated with these people because they didn't really know. Yeah, they were somewhere, they got lucky, they did. But when you can tell, we've talked about this before. You can talk for somebody for 5 minutes and you can tell if they know what they're, like a doctor. he talks to another doctor. If he doesn't know what he's talking about, then he's not a good doctor.
That's another subject we can spend a lot of time over. Barry, I just want to summarize today because I think this is very important. Thank you for coming on board and sharing your background and experience and allowing me to bring some of my background and experience into this as well. I just want to bring you or remind you of the fact that academics are crucial when it comes to goal setting. The best of the academics at Yale University, Harvard University, a bunch of other universities. Here in Australia, I can quote 20 universities that are teaching goal setting at that level. And yet in the sales industry worldwide, people don't get it and don't want to get it. That's the worst part. I want to talk about the law of attraction again, because it's something most people don't get either. They have an opinion on the law of attraction. I would prefer to work with a process that I know has been around for more than 2,000 years. And in fact, when you go through chronologically through the scriptures, they say it goes for around about 6,000 years of written information. The other thing, there are 8,000 promises in the Bible in total. So far, 6,000 have come to pass. That means 75% of all the biblical promises are already here. I don't know any other source that can be that accurate. The 20% still have to be ratified, but when you start talking about ratifying those 20%, I believe that will be 100% ratio on that 20%, not an 80%. Even if it is 80%, it means the majority of everything promised in the Bible has come to pass. And if you use that as the foundation for your law of attraction, and in my training, I actually give you scripture after scripture in every one of the sections that you can use to affirm the law of attraction biblically. Now, that's something I haven't seen anybody else do, but it's very doable. And once you start understanding the power of what you're doing and the understanding that the word of God is 4,300 times, the word Lord appears 8,000, forgiveness is 3,500, wealth 2,700 times. And out of all the scriptures that came from Jesus Christ in his ministry on this earth, 10% of those scriptures were about wealth and finance. Start thinking about that. I would appreciate that you go back and play this information over and over, because the more you do it, the more you will understand not only the benefit, the wealth, but also the power of what's been shared with you today. I'm going to close by saying, God bless you in every one of your endeavors, and please take on board what I've shared, because this will make an incredible difference in your life, both now and into the future. God bless you. Bye now.
Thank you.